My granddaughter whispered, "Grandma, Mom said you're too old to own a house." What I did next shattered my greedy family. Stay with me till the very end and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far the truth really spreads. I still remember how her tiny fingers clutched my wrist, warm and trembling. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but every word struck me like a thunderclap. "Grandma, Mom and Dad want to take your house tonight." Everything stopped. The laughter from the party, the sound of wrapping paper tearing even the ache in my knees. All I could hear was the pounding in my chest and the innocent voice of my 8-year-old granddaughter telling me my own child was planning to betray me. Let me back up. My name is Margaret. I'm 73, a widow for nearly a decade, and I live alone in the house my late husband and I built just outside Seattle. I've lived through grief, raised a daughter, helped raise a granddaughter, and truly believed that family meant safety. Until today, we were celebrating Lily's birthday. She had just unwrapped the book I'd picked out, smiling so big it made all the long nights of missing her grandpa feel worth it. I bent down to kiss her cheek, and that's when she said it. That one sentence that made my blood run cold. I froze. My back straightened without thinking. I tried to smile, but I must have looked pale because Lily tugged at my hand and asked if I was okay. I wasn't. Nothing was okay anymore. My daughter and her husband, the ones I'd helped through every financial disaster, supported through every crisis, were they really about to rob me of the only place I had left? I looked around the room at the balloons and cake and neighbors chatting like nothing was wrong. But something was terribly wrong. And from that moment on, I knew. I wasn't just a grandmother anymore. I was a woman about to fight for her life, her legacy, and her truth. Looking back, I don't regret giving them everything. I really don't. When my daughter said she and her husband were struggling to buy their first home, I handed over part of my retirement fund without blinking. It was what family did for each other. That's how I was raised. That's how I raised her. Then came the credit card debt. I told them to stop worrying. I paid it off in one check. And when Lily needed tuition for her preschool, I told them I'd cover it. I always said yes. I said yes because I believed they needed help, and I believed it was my role to protect them even from life itself. The house I live in now wasn't just built with bricks. My husband and I poured our whole hearts into it. Every corner holds a story. The creaky step near the hallway, the window in the kitchen that never quite closes, his favorite chair still facing the morning sun. When he passed, I thought the house would feel empty. But somehow it held him. It still does. When Lily was born, they asked if I could watch her while they worked. I didn't hesitate. I rearranged my life just to be there. I fed her, held her through fevers, read her bedtime stories that her parents were too tired to tell. She made the silence after my husband's death a little softer. I wasn't just a grandmother. I was a second mother. I gave my time, my savings, my love. And not once did I ask for anything back. Not once did I keep score. Because I thought when you give with love, it comes back in trust. That's what I believed. Until now. I used to think love meant always giving the benefit of the doubt. That if someone stumbled, you held their hand tighter, not questioned their loyalty. Maybe that's why I ignored the first little signs. It started with a conversation over dinner. My daughter casually mentioned that there was a new assisted living center opening nearby. She said it had elevators, on-site nurses, and no slippery stairs. I laughed and told her I could still outwalk half my bridge club. She didn't argue, but the way she looked at her husband, it was too quick, too rehearsed. Another time, we were at the farmer's market. A neighbor I've known for decades pulled me aside. "Margaret," she said, "you're always helping them. Don't you think it's time they stood on their own feet?" I smiled politely, but my chest tightened. I told her she's my daughter. If I don't trust her, who will? Back then, I thought I was being loyal. Now I wonder if I was just refusing to see. There were conversations that felt more like interviews. They'd ask questions about my will, about how I managed my accounts. It was always cloaked in concern. Are you sure you're keeping track of everything, Mom? Do you want help with the paperwork? I told myself they were just being responsible. But their tone never matched the words. Then came the moment that chilled me. They suggested I put the house in both our names. Just in case something happened, they said. It'd save time, avoid legal messes. My daughter even brought printed documents. Said we could just sign and get it over with. I told her I'd think about it. She smiled and didn't push, but I saw it again. That look between them. Like they were actors waiting for a cue. Still, I defended them. When Thomas, my old friend, warned me to be careful, I brushed it off. He had handled my late husband's estate. He'd seen too many ugly family stories. But I told him not mine. My girl would never do that. He said nothing, just gave me this long, sad look. I didn't understand it then. I do now. At night, I started noticing how often I was alone, even when the house was full. My daughter stopped staying after dinner. My son-in-law's smile started to feel forced. And Lily clung to me a little tighter, like she sensed something wasn't right. Still, I wanted to believe. Because if I let myself see the truth, I'd have to admit that the people I loved most might not love me back the same way. And that was a kind of heartbreak I wasn't ready to face. But the signs were there. They always had been. She waited until the candles were blown out, until everyone clapped and the cameras clicked and the room filled with the kind of laughter that only lasts a second too long. Then she tugged at my sleeve again and whispered, "Mom said you're too old to own a house." I didn't breathe. Not right away. Her voice was soft, like she wasn't sure if she should say it out loud. I leaned closer, forcing a smile as my heart slammed against my ribs. She kept going. She said, "They talk about it when they think I'm asleep." She said, "Daddy said you're not all there anymore. That they want to help you sign some papers. Then they'll be able to keep the house." I held her hand tighter. Not because I meant to. I just needed something to hold on to. Something real. I asked her what else she heard. My voice came out calm, like I was just curious. Inside, I was screaming. She said they said they'd call someone. Someone who decides if old people can still make decisions. A judge, maybe, or someone from a court. She didn't know, but she said Mom said not to worry, that Grandma would be happier once things were taken care of. I didn't cry. Not in front of her. I smiled and brushed her hair behind her ear and told her she was a good girl. I said thank you for telling me. I said I loved her very much. Then I told her to go grab another cupcake. I needed a moment to stop shaking. It was real. All the little signs I had ignored, all the things I had chalked up to paranoia. They were building something behind my back. A case, a plan, a theft dressed in legal words and fake concern. And my granddaughter, my sweet, kind, too honest for her own good Lily. She had become the only person in that room I could still trust. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every shadow looking like a question mark. My mind kept replaying Lily's words, her tiny voice carrying the weight of betrayal too big for any child. I finally drifted off sometime before dawn. And I dreamed of Jack. He was standing by our old garden, hands in his pockets, son on his shoulders. He didn't say anything, just looked at me with those steady, kind eyes of his. And somehow I knew. Get up, Margaret. They can't take what we built. I woke up in a sweat. My pillow damp, my throat tight, but my mind sharp. Sharper than it had been in years. I had given them everything. But I still had my wits. And I wasn't going to let them walk away with my life. I started with the basics. pulled out my bank statements, laid them out across the dining table, and highlighted every suspicious transaction. There were patterns, quiet hidden ones, large withdrawals around the holidays, payments labeled as gifts, school fees, repairs, travel. I wasn't supporting them. I was being drained. Then I opened the old filing cabinet Jack and I kept in the hallway closet. It smelled like cedar and old memories. Inside were our will's home deed copies, insurance letters, and a card Lily made when she was 4 that still had a smudge of jelly on the corner. I sat there for hours combing through each page. If they were planning something, I needed to know what I still had. I called Thomas next. He'd always been more than just a retired lawyer. He was a reminder that some people still knew what integrity looked like. I didn't tell him everything. Just enough. His silence was heavy. Then he asked if anyone had brought up power of attorney. I told him I had a feeling they would soon. The moment I hung up, I heard a soft knock at my door. It was Lily, barefoot, holding her little stuffed elephant eyes wide in the dark. She climbed onto my bed and whispered, "Grandma, I did something. I hope it's okay." I sat up. She reached into her pajama pocket and pulled out my phone. "I hid your phone near Daddy's office," she said. "When he was talking last night, I think he was saying something bad." I froze. She bit her lip. I checked it later. The recording was there. You could hear everything. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I pulled her close and kissed the top of her head, whispering that she was brave. So brave. That recording changed everything. I played it after she fell asleep in my arms. His voice clear as if he were in the room, talking about filing for emergency conservatorship, saying I was slipping, that they needed to act before I changed the will again. I stared at the wall for a long time after, my breath shallow, my fists clenched. This wasn't paranoia. This was war. The next morning, I called the bank's legal department, told them I wanted to check if there had been any inquiries about my accounts. The woman paused. Then she asked me to confirm my full name and address. When I did, she quietly confirmed my son-in-law had come in 2 weeks ago, asking how to initiate guardianship for an elderly family member showing signs of cognitive decline. Said it was urgent. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the sunlight spilling across the kitchen floor. They weren't just planning to take my house. They were planning to take me. But now I had Lily. I had proof. I had Jack's voice echoing in my heart. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I was awake. And I was ready. I started small. I let my hands shake a little more when I held my tea. I sighed louder when I forgot where I left the remote. I muttered to myself when paying bills like numbers were suddenly too much. It didn't take long before my daughter began to exchange glances with her husband again. At breakfast one morning, I stared at my checkbook for a few extra seconds and whispered that maybe it was time someone else handled the finances. My son-in-law's fork paused midair. He put it down, wiped his mouth, and said he'd been thinking the same thing. Said he had some documents that could help. Said it was nothing big, just a way to make sure I was taken care of. I smiled small and shaky. Said I trusted him. That night, he came back with a folder. A full power of attorney packet. Notarized forms, instructions, a pen already clipped to the edge. My daughter watched, barely breathing. I opened the folder and flipped through the pages, pretending I didn't know exactly what this meant. I looked up and said I wanted to sign it the right way, that I didn't want anyone questioning the legality later, that we should have a notary and someone from the bank as witnesses. He blinked, hesitated, then nodded too quickly. He said that sounded very responsible. Said they could arrange everything the next morning. I could feel the relief radiating off him, like he believed the game was already won. But it wasn't. because that night I stayed up calling the notary myself, a woman I'd used years ago for my will. Honest, sharp, kind. Then I called Thomas, asked if he could bring someone from the bank's legal department. I told them what was going to happen and asked them to just be present. Nothing more. Just witness the moment truth would finally walk into the room. The next morning, I wore my softest cardigan and let my hair fall loose around my shoulders. I looked exactly how they wanted me to look. Fragile, confused, old. But inside, I was steel. Ready. Focused. They arrived first. My daughter brought coffee. My son-in-law brought that same smug smile folder in hand, like he was presenting a gift. The notary followed briefcase, neat eyes calm. Then Thomas walked in with a woman from the bank's legal department. That's when I saw a flicker of something on my son-in-law's face. Doubt. We all sat down at the kitchen table. The folder was opened. The pen was placed between us. I picked it up, turned to the notary, and asked if I could speak before signing. She nodded. I looked at my daughter. Then at him. My hand didn't shake this time. I said I wanted everyone to hear what I had to say, that I had listened long enough, that I had given everything I had, time, love, money, to people I thought would protect me. That last night I had reviewed every document in this house, that I had spoken to my lawyer, that I had spoken to the bank. And then I reached into my purse. I placed a folder on the table. It was thicker than theirs. Inside were printed emails, screenshots of account activity, and most importantly, a recording. A recording I had made on a second phone I kept in my bedroom drawer. A recording of my son-in-law speaking on the phone about filing for emergency conservatorship. His voice clear as day, saying I was slipping, that they needed to act fast before I changed my will again. I hit play. The room fell silent. The notary's hand froze over her clipboard. The woman from the bank leaned forward, eyes sharp. When the recording ended, I looked at them both and said I would not be signing anything today, or ever, that these two people sitting across from me no longer had my trust or my love. My daughter stammered, said I misunderstood. My son-in-law tried to laugh, said it was taken out of context, but the notary cut him off. She said she could not in good faith witness or authorize this signature. She said there was serious concern of coercion and possible elder abuse. The bank representative agreed, said this matter needed formal investigation. And just like that, their plan fell apart. Right there. In my kitchen. On my terms. The following week, I rewrote my will. It was time. Time to protect what mattered, not just what was mine. I sat down with Thomas and went over every detail. My name, my wishes, my legacy this time, they were written with eyes wide open. I removed my daughter and son-in-law from everything. No inheritance. No access to my accounts. Nothing. Unless they could show through real action and real time that they had changed. I left that door unlocked, but only barely. Redemption was now their burden to carry. Instead, I created a trust. A quiet, steady little fund under Lily's name. Meant for college. Veterinary school, if that's still her dream. No one else can touch it. No one else has control. She'll receive it when she turns 18 with a letter from me explaining how love should never come with strings attached. That gave me peace. Not revenge. Peace. I wasn't interested in punishing them. I was interested in protecting myself, protecting what my husband and I had built, protecting the only person in that family who saw me not as a bank account, but as a human being. And for the first time in a long time, I slept. Deeply. Fully. I had taken my name back. My dignity back. My life back. Lily came by the next Saturday, a little quieter than usual. She carried a folded brochure in her backpack, creased down the middle like she'd opened and closed it 100 times. We sat on the couch, just the two of us, the afternoon light drifting across the coffee table. She pulled it out slowly. It was for a veterinary college upstate. Pictures of animals, smiling students, and bright lecture halls. She didn't say anything at first, just handed it to me with wide eyes. I held it in my hands and smiled. We looked through it together, page by page. She traced her finger along the photo of a black lab wearing a graduation cap. Then she turned to me and asked almost in a whisper if she could really become anyone she wanted. If she was allowed to dream that big. I didn't hesitate. I put my hand over hers and said yes. And not just that she could, but that she would. That she would walk into that dream with her head held high. Not as a girl caught between adults, but as a young woman who knew her worth. She leaned into me, resting her head against my arm. I told her I'd set something up. That when the time came, she wouldn't have to ask anyone for help. She'd just go. Learn. Grow. Do what she loved. And she wouldn't owe that freedom to anyone but herself. That moment, it filled something in me. A silence I didn't know I'd been carrying. I had lost parts of my family. But I hadn't lost everything. I still had Lily. And Lily deserved better. Not everyone you love deserves your trust. That's a lesson I wish I didn't have to learn so late in life. But I did. And learning it didn't make me bitter. It made me braver, wiser, stronger. Just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they share your heart. And even when they break it, you still have the right to protect what's yours. Your voice, your dignity, your future. Love is not blind. Trust shouldn't be either. If you've ever been betrayed by the ones you counted on most, know this: you are not alone. And what they took from you, you can still rebuild. Maybe even stronger. If my story meant something to you, tell me in the comments. Share your story too. We've all got one. And if you're still healing, still standing back up, still figuring it out, I see you. I'm with you. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Not just about pain, but about taking our lives back. With clarity, with courage, with grace. Someone else might need it too. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.